Hey, everyone. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. There's been a lot going on. You know, the FTC wants to crack down on people using AI for bad advertising. So much so that President Biden is warning of profound AI risk. And like girls want to have fun, like the song says, open source maintainers just want to get paid. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi, everyone. Alan Shimel here for Techstrong. As I said earlier, happy Monday to you. We have got a great lineup to talk about for this Monday. It was an interesting weekend with some news out there, and we've got a great bunch of people to talk to us about it. Let me introduce you to our assembled gang for today. First of all, out in Colorado, he's our CTO and Futurum CTA, and my friend Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, how was the weekend?
Thank you. That was great. It was great. I guess we're going to have to give up on that new Techstrong Gang tagline. Techstrong Gang makes you 10 IQ points smarter. We'll have to hold
no,
that.
we didn't use AI to come up with that, so what's the big deal?
Okay. It's all good then. We're good.
Yeah, we're good. Next up, joining us from New Mexico, where she has been working on her broadband. She's the CEO of Deploy Hub and open source guru, Tracy Ragan. Hey, Tracy, great to have you on.
Thank you, Alan. It's always fun to be here. And I think it does increase my IQ every time I do one of these.
Well, it does. It does. And AI was not used or harmed in the making of that. Also joining us, well, she's now, I guess, a consultant. But
I will be heading into management consulting in the next couple of months. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's our friend and gang member, Hope Lynch. Hey, Hope, welcome. Great to have you here.
Appreciate it. Good topics today.
Thank you. And then last but certainly not least, he's a consultant too, I guess, but he's also the CTO of Visible, not Visual Impact, part of the Futurum Group and just all around good guy, Guy Currier. We had to have someone from the Bronx here. Hey, Guy, how are you?
Absolutely great. Thanks. Happy to be here. And I have open sourced my IQ, and I would like to be paid for that. So
yeah, okay. Get online. Anyway, it's going to be an interesting day here, guys. Thank you all for joining me on the gang today. Let's jump right into our first block. So the FTC has come down and announced that they are going to start enforcing and coming down on people who are using AI for advertising claims. But it's not just saying we're going to increase using this will increase your IQ 10 points. I get the feeling it's using like sort of deep fakes or other kind of AI-derived false images, information, audio in furtherance of selling something. But, you know, that was my take on it. Guy, I know you reviewed a lot of this. What do you make of it?
Well, the lead example that the FTC gave was a company called Do Not Pay, which was offering a service that allowed the consumers in their claim to go and sue without needing to consult a lawyer. So I think there's a little bit of depth to this Operation AI Comply. I think it's probably quite broad in scope ultimately. So you have the use of AI to simulate, for example, a celebrity endorsement. That's an obvious kind of a violation. Yeah. But then in this case, you have AI to make a claim that is fundamentally misleading. Now, the governing law is that you are not allowed to make misleading claims. Not that it doesn't happen all the time, and there's a question of judgment. Where's the line of a claim that's genuinely misleading in a legal sense versus, let's say, not misleading in the legal sense, even if ordinarily we would say, it's untrue. The important point here is on the recognition that now we can automate the creation of misleading products or misleading claims. We can claim something is something that it isn't, but looks that way. As I'm fond of saying on these kinds of calls, AI right now is simulation. It is artificial, but it's not intelligent. It's simulation. So therefore, it is designed, it is trained to appear true. I think that there is almost no possible depth you can go as AI develops with something like what the Federal Trade Commission is trying to do. The critical question is it going to be effective?
Yeah.
And I think this is the P.T. Barnum rule. There's a sucker born every minute. This is sucking people into false claims, false advertising, claiming AI will do something that it won't do. In the case of, you mentioned Guy, they didn't hire a lawyer to check, and they didn't do any verification of what AI generated. Was it comparable to a $200 an hour lawyer? They just made the claim and put it out there. There's another company that writes fake reviews, product reviews. It's kind of another form of a deep fake, if you will. So it is really kind of consumer protection activity, not saying this is AI or that's not. It's just AI's in the picture of making some false claim or some kind of fraud against the consumer.
Yeah, when I saw that, it was like, why is AI being targeted here? Shouldn't that be the case for all products and software? How does this impact Facebook, right?
Yeah.
If somebody's putting false advertising out there or saying false things, like we know that is happening every single day, is Facebook responsible for that? These are pretty hard questions, but I am very happy to see that our government is stepping in to this area, because we have sidestepped it for so long and passed it off to the EU to make decisions. It's time that we do get into the game and start leading the way in terms of defining what's safe and what's not. And at least we're there. But I don't think this should be just for AI. I think it should be for all products.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons AI has been called out, but I do agree, there are already rules that would take care of this, right? When you're talking about truth in advertising. But the AI help, the bump I think it gives is the level of sophistication that they can now apply, and how convincing it can become, and how truthful it sounds, that people who maybe previously would not have been susceptible to it now would. And this market distortion that could happen, consumer deception, yes, there are rules to take care of that, but I think AI just makes it faster and so much more.
So, Trace, I probably am closer to what Tracy says, in that if something is wrong, it's wrong whether you used AI or not. I really feel like the theme here, and it's for the next block too, is we're making AI a whipping boy, right? If you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns, right? Isn't that what they say? Well, if we outlaw, AI, only outlaws will use AI. But it doesn't stop someone from writing a whole bunch of false Amazon reviews. It makes it easier to do more, but people can still, crowdsource that. And it's been going on a long time. So,
Alan, this is only suspicion on my part. I wonder if the FTC is just doing this and highlighting AI where they've done it to say, yes, we're doing something about AI too.
Right, to show we're on it.
Exactly.
It could be. It could be. And quite frankly, under the present Supreme Court, I could absolutely see a court saying, hey, the FTC has overstepped their authority here, their congressional mandate. The Congress never specifically said that you should come down on AI or rule on AI advertising.
This doesn't seem to be a new set of rules. It's more an effort on that. I mean, Mitch, I think you have a really good point. There's a certain element of this that feels like, a PR effort. And there actually is a nice enforcement mechanism there. It's not pure PR. It's not pure, please love the FTC more now or at all, because it's also a warning about, for other companies to be careful about their use of AI. The fundamental laws and the rules have nothing to do with AI. They have to do with fraud. And I think that the critical element of AI here is that it automates the appearance of truthfulness at scale. And that should require a particular effort. But I don't think particular rules or new laws either.
So,
well, I do think that John Schwartz used a term that I keep thinking about in one of our calls. He called it authoritative bias. And I think kind of as Hope pointed out, AI has a mystique to it. And we saw that as soon as we had investors starting to invest in AI, everybody's product became an AI product.
Yeah. And
somehow, because it has AI in front of it, it's something that's better, right? But it's not really true. And so there is something to be said about being honest about what you're delivering, and if it's AI, and if it's really the thing that you're buying. And I do feel like in this category, AI, we do have an issue with AI because the spin cycle has been so fierce.
But let me give you devil's advocate for a second. I think things like this can have a chilling effect on legitimate uses of AI, and I'll give you an example. My oldest son Landon's up in Boston in his third year of law school, and he's heavily involved in what they call the legal technology lab at his school, Suffolk University Law School. And what they're working on are chatbot interfaces, basically with specific LLMs, and then using larger LLMs as well, that will allow indigent people to better navigate the legal system. They're being, their landlord's trying to evict them, wrongfully or not. They have a family law issue, or, some other, even criminal law or civil law, whatever, right? There's a lot of people who can't afford lawyers, or for whatever reason don't want to use a lawyer, and not all legal issues should require a lawyer, right? It makes the whole system more expensive and bogs down. AI has the promise of really helping these people. I've seen some of the programs and apps that they've worked, in the housing court, for instance. It's amazing. It really helps. It tells a person how to respond to an eviction notice. Where's the court? What part of court? What needs to be proved or disproved? It's a tremendous tool for people who otherwise don't have access. And
I agree. But yeah, especially in law and health, it could really transform the way we interact with law and health in particular.
Yeah, no,
right?
This will have a chilling effect on it, these kinds of things, right? Does the Suffolk University Law School Technology Lab have to worry about, putting this on social media or something?
I don't think they do. I mean, when we're talking about a university that most people would consider a trusted source and not a bad actor, right? I think they probably are already taking every precaution that would already be outlined. They're trying to be ethical. They have a standard of transparency, hopefully. I think they can take a look at it, but probably pass it by. The ones who need to take a closer look are, I'm going to say it, the ones who are more like just the hustlers. We want to make money. We want to make money fast. If we're caught and we get in order to take something down, sure, we'll do it. But then we'll spend something else up, right? Because we can do it really, really quickly with AI. But I think, again, that just mirrors what we already are dealing with in cases of fraud, typically.
I like Tracy's point, too, that by over-rotating on the use of the word AI, and everything now has AI in it, this may not be a perfect analogy, but it's kind of like natural potato chips and natural cornbread mix, and natural has no meaning, right? You kind of get to the point where what AI is in it and why do I care? Is you just putting it on there because, it's new and improved, better, faster, cheaper, whatever kind of wording. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's sort of you build up this kind of skepticism or cynicism about AI. If everything is AI, then nothing is AI.
Yeah, that's a point too. Well, I think we're going to have to see how this plays out, right? Right now it's warmer than that, so let's see when the rubber meets the road. Speaking of rubber meeting the road, though, we need to take a break right here and peel on out of here. We're going to come back and talk about more AI risks, though, coming out of the government. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
In a world where every line of code powers the future, every keystroke can introduce new threats. As software evolves, so must security. It's time to rethink how we protect our digital world. Join the leaders in DevSecOps and AI at the OpenText DevSecOps Virtual Summit on September 24th. Discover how innovation is transforming software delivery. Faster, more secure, and smarter. From AI-driven security to the truth behind cloud security, get the insights that will keep you ahead of the curve. Don't just watch the future unfold. Be part of it. Register now and secure your place in tomorrow's world.
Hey, everyone. We're back here on Techstrong Gang, continuing our Let's Meet Up on AI Day theme for this Monday. We recently had an article over at Techstrong.ai, which happens to be a great resource for AI, by the way, so check it out. But it was an article, evidently President Biden warned of profound AI risk in using and what AI can offer. And of course, this has triggered yet another round of angst among AI. Well, I think people who are pro-AI just take it for what it is, But for people who may not really understand it or see conspiracy theories or, have anxiety around this, it's just sets another cycle spinning. Tracy, what's your take on this?
Well, when you're watching a president from the United States in his last address to the UN bring up AI, you have to pay attention. Software in general is chaos. We are really, and in the AI world in particular, because it's moving at such a fast pace, this is a very chaotic time in the technology. What I in the article, what I was surprised to see is that that he is really supporting the General Assembly to establish some kind of rules of the road for AI across countries. That's a huge undertaking, to be quite honest, but it may be the first step that we need to start thinking about in terms of how do we manage AI, in particular in areas where it can really influence the masses and how they think, in areas of healthcare, in areas of law, like we just spoke about. So there's got to be some level, something established across nations that explains and discusses how AI should be used. Now, how do we prevent risk and deepfakes and disinformation? That's a different story altogether, but at least we should have some basic standards of how AI can be applied. Now, why I question the ability to prevent the security problems around AI and security and software altogether is because we are living in such a chaotic environment in terms of software development. There is so much going on right now that software developers, who are the first line of defense, do not have the skills or the tools to prevent this. So yes, let's at least start a rules of the road discussion across all nations, some sort of standard resolution as a basis for making decisions in our own governments. I saw that Oprah did a thing on AI. I was going to watch it, but I didn't have time. And I found it really interesting that somebody like Oprah would want to have a discussion with the masses about AI.
She gave an AI out to everyone in the audience. You get an AI, you get an AI, you get an AI.
Well, sometimes I think, is it hype? Are we scaring ourselves about AI because it's happened from the very beginning? Is it a lack of trust, which I myself have expressed on this show, not trusting self-driving cars, not trusting the Salesforce RAG to go out and, hit my potential customers. So I think there's a lot of things coming together here, but having a real discussion across countries, that are delivering AI solutions to the world is essential at this point in time. I don't know if it's going to solve anything, but a discussion is the first place to start. And we haven't had many of those. So how do we move forward from just going from a rules of the road to actually implementing real standards in AI? Well, let's do that for software security in general, and we'll see.
I'll be the skeptic on Mr. Biden here, President Biden and others. I'm sure there are, but I really scratch my head in trying to think, what have we done on a global basis in terms of implementing something like this? And the things that naturally come to mind are, war kind of activities, the Geneva Convention, rules about that, things like the arms race, the nuclear proliferation. And I can't really think of anything in our world that's been successful like that, other than what the EU is doing, what California is doing. It seems like it's going to be regional. I have to dip back into, you and I were talking about the new Dune Prophecy series coming out on HBO. It's the thinking machines. We banned them because they, had the wars and they took over, and we can't have any more of those anymore. Something really bad happened, and so we're going to severely control it. But I really scratched my head about how would this actually come together, and would it have any teeth? Would it have any impact?
Well, Mitch, I got to give you double credit for making a Dune reference, dude. Let the spice flow. Let the spice flow.
Yeah.
But there's a show in November coming out on Max, right? Dune Prophecy, yep. I think it's called, and it's really based on the book, the Sisterhood, which is the starts of the Bene Gesserit. For Dune heads out there, don't miss it. But back to AI and President Biden at the UN. Look, my take on this is what really scares these governments. I don't think it's the FTC stuff cracking down on AI claims. I don't even think it's the software vendors or the software developers having to deal with it in their supply chains and so forth. I think it's the potential for nation states to use AI for misinformation, disinformation campaigns, and other forms of espionage, or to further kind of nation state aims. That is really we're focusing in here on, or that's
and warfare
focus.
Warfare,
not just cyber warfare,
right?
But physical warfare.
Mm-hmm.
What do they call them? Low intensity conflicts or whatever. Yeah. I have to, I guess, uncharacteristically double down on Mitch's pessimism in a certain sense. I think that these are inevitable efforts. I think that Biden's speech, any world leader's speech or speechifying on this is necessary, and efforts made by nations and transnational organizations to regulate in AI, or they must be done. They will be done. They're inevitable. I just don't think that they can possibly be done fast enough to keep pace with how AI is developing. On an earlier Techstrong Gang, Dave Nicholson and I talked about the inevitable other shoe dropping in AI, however, which is to say that AI is not on an inexorable growth and development path. To which I would add that it is a tiny footprint in IT and technology plans and budgets right now. It's just extremely promising. It's getting tons of attention. It's growing fast. My point, though, in the end is that the shoe that's going to drop is partly financial. Like Dave said, the investment is not infinite and forever. People want return. But to my sense, it's even more space and power limited. Eventually, it might take over a lot of the space and power budget going to Bitcoin. But in the end, it just can't grow fast enough for enough fabs and enough power sources and enough data centers to support. And in the end, there will be a popular backlash to this. And that is the only thing that could potentially limit it. It's really not a governmental action or otherwise. When there is enough sentiment against it, people will stop producing it as much because there will be less money or profit in it. Now, I don't even know if that's going to happen, but that to me is the only thing that can really stop this. It's the juggernaut of all juggernauts.
Well, I think there's a question of enforcement as well, right? What's going to stop? So, I live in New Mexico, as Alan pointed out. The road that gets to my house is about a 2-mile dirt road. And it goes on for another 3 miles, and there's 2 other houses on this road. And one of the neighbors decided that they wanted to stop a speed limit sign on our road. God bless him. He doesn't want anybody going more than 25 miles an hour. Well, I drive down that road at 40 miles an hour every single day. Who is going to enforce in a private road a speed limit? So how do we enforce in the world of bad actors? How do we enforce those bad actors from complying with what several nations may have gotten together and agreed to at a UN assembly? And that is where our biggest problems are. And this is the same problem we're having in all of our social media platforms. How do we stop those bad actors from spending huge amounts of money on creating, false narratives and shifting the emotion and feelings of an entire country? It's really, really hard. It's impossible. The only way we can do that is each individual taking their own responsibility for believing what they read or for entering their password and updating it on a regular basis, right? So it always comes back to the individual. And we do have some bigger, broader issues when it comes to bad actors on the world stage using this technology. And I don't see how you can stop it any more than anybody can stop me from driving 40 miles an hour down to my house.
You still need to have the models, though. And the foundational models are the to my sense, the I don't want to use the word foundation again, the linchpin or something of the development of AI. Foundational models take months to train, huge data sets. They want to expand those data sets. We need more data, like it may be synthetic or whatever it is. And all of that means bigger and bigger systems for training. I don't think we're going to get another mathematical trick like we got with the creation of the transformers in those kinds of ways to shortcut the mathematical calculations. So even sovereign funding of that sort of thing is going to wind up with limits. Until we make the next technological leap, maybe it's quantum. I don't know.
I don't know if it's a good comparison, but in some ways it reminds me of the climate crisis, whether you believe in it or not. But there's been climate accords. It's an impending threat, albeit maybe it's more real today than it was 10 years ago. I think that's what it is about AI, is it's this looming threat. It seems more on our doorstep, but it's not real yet. It's not nothing bad has happened because of it forcing us to do that. And when would that cause us enough pain or concern or whatever, whether it's a threat to humanity or it's just our livelihood, for countries to get together and create some kind of accords around AI? Possibly. It happens in a lot of science fiction, but in the real world, would that happen? I think there'd have to be some event that would really push us over the edge to make that happen.
I mean, the fact that we can't get our act together on climate change globally doesn't fill me with confidence that we can do anything for AI. But of course, that's probably something for Bonnie Schneider and her sustainability practice. I'm AI whipping Boyd out for today, guys. Let's take a break here. Let's come back and, talk a little bit about open source. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey, everyone, back here at Techstrong Gang on this lovely Monday. To paraphrase the one and only Cyndi Lauper, girls just want to have fun, and open source maintainers just want to get paid. They haven't been for many years, but it's becoming more of the norm. Tracy, you're our open source guru expert here. What do you think? Open source maintainers getting paid make a big difference?
Oh, I have so many opinions on this topic.
I thought you might.
I could go on for quite some time. First of all, many open source maintainers are paid because they work for companies like IBM and Google and Apple who pay them to work on open source projects. Thank God they do. Secondly, there are hobbyists out there who put a lot of amazing time in, and there isn't a good structure for actually getting them paid. So yes, open source developers, if they can get paid, they should get paid. But that is not what we created when we created the open source world. We created a world of hobbyists. And if you're good at it, you might get something that gets funded, or becomes super popular like a Jenkins. I mean, Kosuke showed us the way, right? But there's a whole other topic around this with foundations like the Apache Foundation or the Linux Foundation being able to provide a way to do that. So I'll give you an example. Deploy Hub, with the help of Ripple, we got a grant. We took that grant and we said, we want to pay open source developers to do work on this part of the product for some blockchain work. We had no way of getting it done. It took us almost 8 months to figure out how to pay an open source developer from around the world. Linux Foundation, if you go out there, will say, here, raise money to pay your open source developers. But when we went to use it, they didn't really have a way to do that. And finally, GitHub stood up and said, hey, we can do that for you. So we probably were one of the first real open source tools coming out of a small company that was able to work with GitHub to give them the money and allow us to identify pull requests so that the open source developers could get paid. But once they created that pull request, it takes almost 3 months to get your money. So there's not a good structure for it. And for the most part, hobbyists are probably going to continue to be hobbyists unless there's a way you can create some kind of a funding button on your open source project. And that becomes a problem because where are you paying them? All over the world, you can't even pay somebody in the U.S. who's working in a particular country. If there's sanctions, so it's a big puzzle to solve, but it's a critical one because those hobbyists, if they have the option to get paid, they would get paid, and we would love to pay them with some of the grant funding we've gotten in the past. But it's been quite a journey to get it done.
But also, I think to your point, Tracy, when you were saying it took 8 months, right, to find someone. Volunteering for open source projects is great, but there would be so many more people, honestly, who would participate if they knew they were compensated for their time. And the number of people who are actively involved, at least from what I have seen, it feels like it's trending down. Whenever I have conversations now with younger people in tech, there's a young man who contacted me last week if he wanted some advice. Every time I speak to them, I say, have you considered joining an open source project and making contributions? I never thought about doing that. I don't know where to start. I don't know where to begin. But also they say, well, but I have work, I have school, and it's free. And I don't feel that passionate about it. So passion is fantastic, but as critical as open source software is to doing business, I would love to see, as Tracy mentioned, there are organizations that have people on staff. When I was at Red Hat, when I was at CloudBees, same thing, people on staff who are making contributions. But it's great to get other people also engaged who maybe are not working at large technology organizations.
We have mechanisms that might be able to be reconstituted for this. Why not GoFundMe for open source projects? Or maybe we create a sort of like the Artists Guild, right? People come together who have trouble assembling the resources to do what they're passionate about. Maybe there's some form of open source maintainers guild. We can start one at Techstrong Gang. But there should be ways where we can go seek funding to support projects that we want to have done. Now, there'll be popular ones and there won't be popular ones. It won't work for everybody. But maybe it's something like that. I mean, the entrepreneur in me is thinking outside the box here. There's got to be ways we can do some things here.
Well, I think GitHub they solved the problem for us. Thank goodness. I mean, I feel like it's a testament to deploy of something we actually got done to get our Ortelius contributors paid for working on the blockchain. But it was a task, and if we hadn't have been passionate about getting it done, it wouldn't have happened. And it required the Linux Foundation, for me, pounding on the Linux Foundation to reach out to the GitHub and say, is there a way we can put this together? So they had sponsorships, right? They have a contributor sponsorships, and that's how we used it. We set it up through sponsorships. But there is I'm on a lot of open source boards, and I'm on a lot of open source meetings, and there isn't even an acknowledgement from some of the contributors working for the big companies who are getting paid that there's hobbyists on the calls. They don't even recognize that. They assume that everybody on the call is getting paid that day to work. They don't realize that I'm taking off an hour and I'm going to have to put an hour later in to make up for it, right? They don't understand that. And to Hope's point, the university system is a really good way for young developers to get more experience. And in a way, they can get paid for it if the university systems allow them to contribute to an open source project and get school credits for it. There's no better way to learn about being a software developer than being in an open source project. But the university systems don't even teach them about an open source community. And if they could, if one of their classes was, you're going to have to join an open source project, you're going to have to do, over the course of a semester, you're going to have to do X number of pull requests, you're going to have to do 1 or 2 blogs for doing DevRel, boy, would they get some really good experience in working with the community and then meet people who are coming from these big companies and as a networking effort, right? So I really believe there are ways to make open source pay for it, for committers to get rewarded in some way. But we have to change the way we think about it, because most open source right now, when you think about it, comes from big companies. And the hobbyists get forgotten.
I have to admit, I get real puzzled about this situation. It's something I've scratched my head about for years. The best analogy I can think of is really imperfect, which is sort of like social and content creation and such, where there are enthusiasts and hobbyists who contribute in some way to the public discourse. Meanwhile, YouTube is raking in the gajillions from this free content on the one hand, and then offering VIGs back on the other. But in many cases, maybe this model is changing somewhat, but YouTube stars become mainstream regular stars paid by studios and whatnot. There's a clear difference here, which is that by its very nature, the contribution, I'll stick to YouTube, is very public and available, and a whole audience can pile in. Some of the most critical software development work happens in a much more limited community. But I do think Tracy may be this is part of what you're saying, clarifies things a little bit, which is that the appreciation that consumers of social influencer content provide, this fandom, you don't really have such a mechanism on the open source side. The developers get experience, they can tout their contributions, but it's all done in this very private way. And the last thing I'll say is that I think the way it aligns the most, my analogy, is you still got to know how to build your resume, promote yourself, promote your brand, and all that stuff. As an open source contributor, it just doesn't all fit. There's some missing element here.
One thing this calls to mind that was interesting to me this week, I think it was in New York, or Chicago, other cities, but City Bike, one of those bike rentals where if you move bikes like U-Haul, you move the bikes from the lower demand areas to the higher demand areas, you get credits, and you can cash those credits in for dollars. And some people are making $6,000-$7,000 a month moving bikes during the day. Do they love those bikes? No. Are they passionate about bikes? No. Are they passionate about the money? Yes, absolutely. They are, right? They're competing to do this. Now, acknowledge they're saying they need to solve this problem because this was not their intent, but it is working to get people engaged and to get people move things around. But one of the other points that I don't think we've touched on as much, but I definitely want to call out, is the advocacy around having some type of standardized model, a standardized framework, so people are fairly compensated. So if I am working on Kubernetes and that is bankrolled and, we know dollars are flowing versus a much, much smaller project, do I need to figure out anew, completely from scratch, how will I be paid? What does it look like? What should I expect? I think that would also be a barrier, even if we move toward more compensation. Having something that's at least a loose framework would definitely be a help.
So I got a couple of thoughts on this. Surprise. Before I start, though, I want to mention that this discussion came out of a survey by Tidelift, and we over on DevOps.com, we have an article, I think Mike Brizard wrote about it. And the real point of the article was, or one of the big points of the article was that compensated maintainers do a better job of making sure the source code is secure than non-compensated, right? And so beyond the public good of people getting paid for what they do, it serves a greater public purpose in that we have more secure open source software, which is something we all want to have, right? So that's number one. Number two, though, hey, I am all for people getting paid for their time. Let me say that up front. I'm a capitalist. You work, you should get paid. However, part of my heart dies listening to this story because I've been an open source supporter for many, many, many years. And quite frankly, it wasn't the guys getting paid by IBM who made Linux, though IBM contributed a lot of code to Linux. KK didn't fork Hudson and make Jenkins to make money. Hudson, right, Sun was getting bought by Oracle and everything else that was going on, and Hudson wasn't responding to what the community wanted, and so they forked it. Mitch,
look at Blue Sky.
Right. Well, Mitch, you and I went through this with Snort and Nexus and everything else. What drove open source, what made open source was that P word, passion. So many founders of open source projects I know, it was a hobby, or they saw a problem and they wanted to fix it and they wanted to share that fix with everyone. And that's why they started these open source projects. It wasn't about the money. Now, today, it's gotten corrupted to a state. I don't know if corrupted's the right word, but it's gone commercial, right? They sold out to the man, whether it's the Linux Foundation or whoever the man's going to be in this particular
Citadel versus the Bazaar. Remember the
exactly.
book?
And and so everyone says, hey, if I'm going to get involved in open source, bucks here, right? I want to be the next, name an open source business model where people made a lot of money. I think it is a great exercise for students, right? It would teach them about community. It would teach them about how software is built. It would teach them how to get a job and how to network. However, you can't fake passion. And I think passion is a necessary, critical ingredient in open source success. I don't think we've quite formalized open source that you add a pinch of Red Hat and a pinch of Hashi and a little bit of license change over here, and voila, you got a successful open source project. It takes passion. Tracy, you know that. You're on these boards. It takes money too today, unfortunately.
It takes passion. You really have to believe in what you're delivering. And I didn't mention the security aspect of that article because I questioned it.
Really?
I really did. I questioned it because the open source, every developer that I know who is at least committing to the Ortelius project is as concerned about security as anybody who's paid being on it. The other thing I want to say is now, Ortelius is doing a really good job of tracking and exploiting and showing vulnerabilities across all these projects. And many of the Linux Foundation projects who have big time companies paying for that open source to be developed, they still have a big 0 and a fat red 0 in the OpenSSF scorecard, right? So they haven't implemented OpenSSF scorecard any more than anybody else has. So the open source security problem sort of got clobbered when AI came along. There's not a lot of funding going into it. There's not a lot of interest in it. So that I think that's a bigger problem. I don't think it's just that the hobbyists are less worried about security than people who work for a large company. So I just questioned it. There may be good statistics that back it, but that's not been my experience.
Agreed. Hey, gang, I think we're at the end of our time here for today. But what a great discussion and what a great way to end it. For those of you out there, I'll tell you another little secret. I've been interviewing and working with founders and entrepreneurs for 25, 27 years. You know what the single common characteristic I've seen in every successful startup and startup entrepreneur? Passion. If you don't have passion for what you're building, whether as a founder of a company or even just a contributor, if you don't have passion, find something that you're passionate about and do that. So,
Tracy Ragan's the perfect example.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll leave you all with that. This is Alan Shimel for Techstrong Gang. Guy, Hope, Tracy, Mitchell, thank you. Thank you out there for watching. We've got a full lineup of Techstrong TV coming your way following this, so stay tuned for that. We'll be back tomorrow with another gang edition. Until then, have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.